Good morning. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' weekly meeting for Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. Commissioner Gumman, preliminary comments. Are you ready to approve the consent agenda?
Good morning, and nothing at the onset, and I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Plant?
Good morning. I would vote to approve the consent agenda as well.
As would I. Ms. Kirkland, Mr. Branson, commission rules regarding basic emergency service. Ms. Kirkland. Oh, you're still muted.
Try that again.
There you go.
Thank
We
you.
can hear you.
Good morning, Commissioners. On September 17th, 2024, Quest Corporation, doing business as CenturyLink QC, filed Advice Letter 3169 and Proceeding 24AL0397T with several proposed changes to Emergency Reporting Services Tariff Colorado PUC number 25, offering 4 new services to its current basic emergency service offering. During the course of that proceeding, CenturyLink indicated that some of those services might be offered as optional. In response, on December 9th of 2024, several 911 authorities jointly filed a petition for declaratory order, or in the alternative, petition for rulemaking, seeking Commission direction and clarity on whether BES tariffed items could be optional, and if so, how these would be reimbursed, if at all, using the state 911 surcharge. In its ruling in that proceeding, the Commission issued decision number C25-0152, granting in part the joint petition for declaratory order. In the decision, the Commission clarified that optional services may be offered and tariffed, and directed staff of the PUC to initiate stakeholder processes regarding proposed rule updates with the expectation that it will bring forward a proposed notice of proposed rulemaking for Commission consideration. It's with this background that the NOPR before you today was prepared. The purpose of this notice is to, number 1, provide changes to the definition of the basic emergency service rules, including the introduction of a definition for core BES component and one for optional BES component. Number 2, provide direction to BESPs as to the classification of required components of a basic emergency service tariff with respect to the 2 new definitions. Number 3, provide clarity to the criteria for reimbursement of both component categories defined above. And number 4, add an item to the annual data collection from 911 governing bodies to assist the Commission in making data-driven decisions. A pre-notice version of the draft rules was circulated among members and participants with the Commission's 911 Advisory Task Force, which includes representation from the BESP, and 3 workshops were held, which resulted in the consensus production of the draft rules provided as an attachment to the decision today. I can pause for questions or discussion, or I can proceed to the recommendation.
If you go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Thank you. Staff recommends adopting the draft decision to open a notice of proposed rulemaking consistent with our discussion, set the matter for a hearing, and refer the matter to an administrative law judge.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Ms. Kirkland. I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I, and that can be an ABC order, opening a rulemaking, issuing a NOPR, and proposed rules, and referring it to an ALJ. So thank you, Ms. Kirkland.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I think we're going to move proceeding number 25M-024T to next week. And let's take up proceeding number 24AL-0275E, the Black Hills rate case last. So with that, let's jump to proceeding 24A-0296E. Mr. Davis, Wildfire Mitigation Plan, Public Service.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. On June 27th of last year, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an application for approval of its 2025 through 2027 Wildfire Mitigation Plan and Public Safety Power Shutoff Plan. As the Commission has observed a number of times, Public Service's application is sweeping in its proposed costs and its proposed actions to reduce and respond to wildfire risk within its electric service territory. The case intertwines the 2 plans, which reflect not only capital investments to reduce the risk of ignition from utility infrastructure, but also the decision-making and communications protocols public service would use to proactively inform emergency operations staff and impacted customers in the event of severe weather conditions that present an elevated risk of wildfires. At last week's business meeting, the Commission granted the parties' request to provide them additional time for the filing of a written settlement agreement. The request came in the parties' notice that they had reached a settlement in principle on an unopposed comprehensive agreement. Last Friday, the written agreement was filed, and the next procedural milestone is the filing of written testimony in support of approval of the agreement, and that is due next Monday, April 28th. The settlement was filed with a motion to approve the agreement that includes a request from the parties to truncate the hearing from 7 full days and 2 half days, that is, reducing the days from May 5th to 15th as presently scheduled to no more than 2.5 days, starting Tuesday, May 13th, and concluding, if needed, on Thursday, May 15th. I can present the highlights of the settlement before you take up this unopposed request to modify the hearing dates, or you can move to your discussion as to whether a shorter hearing is warranted due to the proposed resolution of the case as presented in the settlement agreement.
Yeah, I'd be curious I think it'd be useful to get the proposed settlement agreement on the table if you don't mind doing that briefly, Mr. Davis.
Not at all. So Public Service's motion to approve the settlement explains that the agreement is the product of extensive collaboration and compromise among the settling parties, and that these compromises reflect a just and reasonable resolution of the case. The negotiated settlement is in the public interest. They argue that it is consistent with Colorado law and policy, and because it's a settlement, it will promote administrative efficiency. Each of the parties who have joined the settlement has pledged its support for the way the issues would be resolved and has agreed to affirmatively support and defend the agreement in full. The settling parties thus seek approval of this agreement without modification. At the highest level, the settlement builds on the company's rebuttal testimony, which itself amended the initially filed application. The significance of this provision in the settlement is that it is where one would find the overall budget for the period 2025 to 2027. That budget shows a cumulative capital spend of about $1.6 billion and a cumulative operations and maintenance spend of about $244 million. As I said earlier, the application entails 2 plans. With respect to the Wildfire Mitigation Plan, or WMP, the settlement includes a proposal for Public Service to underground approximately 50 miles of distribution system from 2025 through 2027. Certain particular projects are prioritized. The settlement contains certain modifications and commitments regarding small conductor replacement, transmission line major rebuilds, wildfire detection cameras, and vegetation management. The company commits to offering battery energy storage system rebates to support eligible customers in certain wildfire risk zones with a budget of $2 million for each plan year, and participant eligibility will be limited to participants in the medical certification program and the Colorado Medical Exemption Program. Public Service will develop a centralized database of company transmission and distribution poles to track age, location, height, and repair and replacement information. And the settlement further contains commitments from the company regarding risk assessment and risk mapping. The settlement also includes several provisions related to the Public Safety Power Shutoff Plan. Under the settlement, the company agrees to complete updates as identified in its bi-monthly status reports that have been filed in this proceeding continuously. The company makes numerous commitments regarding outreach and engagement, specifically with all incident leaders from offices of energy management, including but not limited to the counties, municipalities, and the State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management field managers. Regarding the implementation of any PSPS event, the company agrees to integrate an incident command structure to promote standardization of key internal roles and responsibilities. The company also agrees to file what it calls a PSPS playbook in this proceeding within 30 days of a final commission decision, and that will address internal business unit processes during a PSPS event. Under the settlement, the company agrees to complete its identification of critical customers, including critical facilities, by sharing a preliminary list with emergency management partners in the local jurisdictions where the customers are located. And then regarding communications, the company agrees to comply with the advanced notification processes and timelines included in the PSPS plan, or address in a written notice to the commission following an event why it was not reasonably able to adhere to those processes and timelines. And that filing would be made within 15 days following the proactive de-energization. Excuse me there. In terms of cost recovery, the settlement permits costs recovered as proposed by the company in its direct testimony, subject to certain modifications that are made in the settlement agreement. Transmission-related capital costs will be recovered through the company's transmission cost adjustment until such time as they are recovered through base rates. And the non-transmission capital placed in service beginning January 1st of this year through December 31st of 2027 will be deferred for future recovery. That means that the deferral would be addressed through the wildfire mitigation adjustment. That adjustment would allow the company to begin recovering deferred costs between rate cases. The wildfire mitigation adjustment would be updated twice annually, with new rates going into effect on January 1st and July 1st of each year. And the important thing to note here is that the new rates that would be recovered through this WMA will be based on actual costs as of the most recent available accounting period prior to the filing. So that is that there won't be projected costs, but this will be after the fact cost recovery. Also, the company agrees to withdraw its request in this proceeding to recover through the WMA the deferred balance from its 2020 wildfire mitigation plan, and the expenses of this case without carrying costs will be deferred for future recovery. Next, the settlement provides a framework for the potential securitization of certain capital costs associated with this updated wildfire mitigation plan. The company, in good faith, will make commercially reasonable efforts to file a financing order application with enough time to result in a securitized bond issuance by January 1st of 2029. Staff in the company have specifically agreed to collaborate and mutually agree on the engagement of a commission securitization consultants and counsel, if any, to promote the effectiveness of Section 40-41-1073. And if that securitization does not come to pass, beginning January 1st of 2029, that wildfire mitigation adjustment revenue requirement will be calculated using a return on rate base equal to the company's cost of long-term debt instead of the company's weighted average cost of capital until the effective date of rates in the company's next electric base rate case. Concerning related matters, the settling parties agree that the commission should approve a new accounting deferral in this proceeding to allow the company to track and defer actual costs associated with excess liability insurance premium above what is in base rates. The new deferral would commence in October of this year at the conclusion of the currently approved deferral, and it would be subject to the same limitations provided in the agreement. This new accounting deferral will be capped at $50 million, and the company will not apply any interest to that new accounting deferral. The settling parties also agreed that they support the commission establishing a rulemaking on wildfire mitigation planning and public safety power shutoffs, and they agree to support the commission opening a miscellaneous proceeding after the conclusion of this case to consider and facilitate stakeholder discussions concerning the potential creation and viability of a wildfire fund to address costs of utility-ignited wildfire damages and liabilities. And finally, regarding reporting, the settling parties support the reporting proposal contained in the company's rebuttal case. But in addition, the company agrees to track and report customer outage impacts from the events in its quality of service plan on an annual basis, reporting that information on a census block ID level. Public Service also agrees to develop a baseline probability model for circuits at risk for PSPS and wildfire safety operations, and to develop a forecast for anticipated risk reductions associated with wildfire mitigation investments, consistent with models used by other utilities. So that is as brief as I could do for a very comprehensive settlement. But again, the decision point for you is whether to grant the request to shorten the hearing from May 5th to 15th to only May 13th through 15th.
I guess for me, I'm okay with shortening the hearing. I know I have questions on the level of capital spend and its impacts on rates. I also would point out we have a public hearing April 29th, 4 to 6. So in addition to any general comments, I'd welcome comments on the settlement agreement as outlined by Mr. Davis. But Commissioner Gumman, comments, thoughts, vote?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Davis. Sorry for that summary of the settlement agreement. And I'm fine with shortening the hearing. I think we'd still like to move forward to understand what's in the settlement agreement. Did you throw out dates, Mr. Davis?
Yes, the shortened hearing would begin on Tuesday, the 13th. It would continue on Wednesday afternoon, the 14th, and then conclude sometime on Thursday, the 15th.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I was pulling up my calendar so to make sure I cross-referenced, but that sounds fine to me. And yeah, I appreciate the summary and all the work of the parties to bring us here.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree. Appreciate all the parties coming together for this comprehensive settlement, and the dates sound fine to me. One thing I would like to hear a little bit more from the company about is something that we brought up a few times, which is how having a wildfire mitigation plan of this sort of comprehensive nature would potentially impact home and business insurance rates, and whether they've had any discussions with any of the insurance companies regarding that, or with the state insurance commissioner. Be interested to know if that risk reduction that would ensue after a plan of this nature would have any reflection for homeowners and businesses seeking insurance. Thanks.
Commissioner Plant, are you all right standing on your oral comments, or do you want to put something in the order?
No, that's on the oral comment is fine. Thanks.
All right. I think that can be a very brief ABC decision rescheduling the hearing date. So thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 25AL-0138G, Mr. Fielder, Mr. Haglin, Atmos Energy, regarding the cost of new meters. Mr. Fielder.
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me? All
Yeah,
good?
we can.
Great, thanks you. I'm Jeff Fiedler with your Fixed Utilities staff. This morning, I'm presenting advice letter number 0136, gas, which is Atmos's filing to modify the terms of its gas tariff that specify the cost a new customer must pay for a gas meter, with an effective date of April 28th, 2025. Atmos updated its line extension policy in 2024 to reflect the requirement of Senate Bill 23-291 that new customers pay the costs associated with connecting to the system. This advice letter implements a new approach of assessing meter costs based on the actual size of the meter. Under the current tariff, the amount charged to the new customer is based on the customer class rather than the installed meter size. However, since this new charge was implemented in 2024, the company has determined that some new customers require a gas meter that is different than is typical for that customer's rate class. For example, a large new residential customer might need a larger than typical meter, and conversely, a small commercial customer might require a meter that is typically used for a residential customer. The company proposes to charge new customers based on the actual size of the meter installed, rather than the meter typically used for their customer class. The company is not proposing to change the fee for a given meter size. Staff has reviewed the proposed tariff revisions and considers them to be reasonable. First, the proposed revisions will more accurately align the aggregate revenue collected by Atmos with the costs incurred for gas meter installations. And second, the proposed revisions will ensure that new gas customers pay fees that more accurately reflect the costs of adding themselves to the system. The advice letter filing does not estimate the effect on the company's costs and revenues, which will ultimately depend on the number of new gas customers and the degree to which the current approach is resulting in inaccurate customer fees. I'll pause here for any questions, or I can proceed to a recommendation.
No, we'd welcome a recommendation.
Staff recommends the commission allow the advice letter to take effect by operation of law.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Fiedler. Appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, to me, this is a good step forward in more accurately representing specifically the cost of those meters, but just don't want it to go without saying. Senate Bill 291 disallowed any incentives to join the system, and this may not be the full picture of incentives, just to make sure we're clear that this is just that meter piece and making that more accurate, which I think is an appropriate step to take at this time.
Commissioner Plant.
Yes, I agree. And I agree with the recommendation. And I think this is your first presentation, Mr. Fiedler. So welcome to the commission and to your first presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree as well. And we can allow it to become effective by operational law. Thank you, sir. 25A-0112E, Mr. Davis, Public Service Company, Wind Project CPCNs.
Right. So for my next matter this morning, on March 17th, Public Service filed an application for certificates of public convenience and necessity, or CPCNs, for 3 wind facilities it will own and operate pursuant to its 2021 Electric Resource Plan that includes a clean energy plan as addressed in proceeding number 21A-141E. The company asked the Commission to issue an authority for the Cheyenne Ridge 2 project, a 450 megawatt facility with a 5.5-mile 345 kV radial gen tie to interconnect at the Goose Creek substation. The company also seeks approval to increase the cost to construct performance incentive mechanism baseline for this project by about 6% and to receive a presumption of prudence finding per the Commission's ERP rules for this incremental cost increase. The company also asked the Commission for an authority for the Singing Grass project. That's a 603 megawatt facility with a 29-mile 345 kV gen tie, and it also will connect at the Goose Creek substation. The company seeks approval to adjust its PIM baseline upward by 5.6% and to receive a presumption of prudence finding for that incremental cost increase. And third, the company asks for an authority for the Towner project. This is a 500 megawatt facility with a 23-mile 345 kV gen tie, and it would interconnect at the May Valley substation. The company seeks approval to increase the PIM baseline for this project by about 23.3% and to receive a presumption of prudence finding for that increase. For this particular project, the costs subject to the prudence finding include costs associated with the settlement agreement that was reached between the company and the Northern Cheyenne Tribe, as well as costs associated with project delays during good faith discussions with the tribe regarding mitigating potential impacts to the viewshed of the Sand Creek Massacre National Historic Site. Should the company decide not to grant a CPCN for the Towner project, the company asks for a CPCN for the backup project instead. That project is called Heartstrong, and it's a 550 megawatt facility, including a 45-mile 345 kV radial gen tie, and it would interconnect at the Canal Crossing line tap. In addition to the baseline capital cost increases I just mentioned, Public Service also seeks approval of an updated operational PIM baseline for these projects using the mechanics and calculator pending approval in proceeding number 24A-417E. The company further seeks authority to modify its electric commodity adjustment tariff to pass through transaction costs associated with the monetization of the production tax credits associated with the PTC eligible projects. Public Service states that the Commission has already made a finding of need for these facilities through the ERP process and its Phase 2 decisions in the ERP CEP proceeding. The company further states that all three projects have been impacted by supply chain constraints and geopolitical uncertainty, yet the relief the company is seeking in this CPCN case is consistent with what was provided by the Commission in its decision granting with modification the CEP delivery motion in the CEP proceeding. The company further states that it requires the company to grant a Rule 3617D presumption of prudence on the higher current cost estimates of the three projects. Moreover, Public Service states that in its decision addressing the CEP delivery motion, the Commission deferred granting such a presumption of prudence for the proposed price increases and thus modifying the CTC PIM baselines until this instant CPCN proceeding to allow a project-specific review of each price increase. Public Service proposes to provide construction reporting on the projects and the quarterly construction reports already required by the settlement agreement in the proceeding for the CPCNs for the company's solar facilities coming from the CEP. That's the Rocky Mountain Solar and Storage Project and the Aurora 2 Solar Project. And finally, as is customary in a CPCN proceeding, the company seeks a finding from the Commission that the noise and electromagnetic field levels associated with the facilities are reasonable by Commission rule and require no further mitigation. The filing includes a motion for extraordinary protection of highly confidential information. Public Service seeks to restrict access to documents and information that provide negotiated commercial contract terms and conditions, pricing information, any actual or estimated cost information associated with land right and acquisitions, and any information that is already considered highly confidential pursuant to the protective orders issued in the ERP CEP proceeding. Commission trial staff, the Colorado Office of the Utility Consumer Advocate, Climax Molybdenum Company, and the Colorado Energy Consumers, a group of Public Service's largest non-residential electric customers, have all filed interventions in the case. Staff, UCA, and CEC specifically request a hearing in this matter. In its pleading to intervene by right, filed late yesterday afternoon, staff states it seeks to examine the proposed process for establishing those increased PIM baselines, whether the application and the project characteristics that were bid into the Clean Energy Plan solicitation are consistent with what's being presented in this application, the construction plans, schedules, project management, and other associated processes for the wind facilities, the transmission generation intertie project plans, cost schedules, and management, the proposed reporting and communications procedures for the projects, and the company's engagement and consideration of tribal concerns regarding the Towner project and the company's proposed resolutions. UCA also seeks to examine generally whether the projects are reasonable and in the public interest, including those cost increases from the original bid prices. UCA further seeks to explore whether the Commission should approve the Towner project or instead the backup Hardstrong project, specifically whether shareholders or customers should pay the mitigation payment to the tribe. UCA further raises the question whether the Towner project requires the construction of the $1.8 billion Harvest Mile Chambers Sandown Cherokee transmission project, pointing to testimony filed by the company in support of its just transition solicitation in proceeding 24A442E. Accordingly, UCA requests the Commission to direct the company to provide supplemental direct testimony addressing this issue, modeling the transmission and distribution costs related both to the Towner project and the Hardstrong project, the related interjection capabilities and constraints, and other relevant metrics for the comparison of the two wind facilities. And finally, CEC states that its participation will likely focus on the cost estimates of the facilities, the modified in-service dates, the requested impacts on the cost to construction operational PIM calculations, and the mitigation payment to the tribe pursuant to the settlement reached regarding the Towner project. So the question before you now is whether to set this wind CPCN application for hearing and who should hear it.
Do you have a recommendation?
Sure. I recommend that the commission deem the application complete and refer the matter, including the motion for extraordinary protection and UCA's request for supplemental direct testimony, to an administrative law judge by minute entry. Advisors think the commission has established a sufficient foundation for the ALJ to issue a recommended decision. That foundation is the previous orders that the commission has rendered in the ERP and CEP proceeding.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Mr. Davis. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I, and that could be an ABC decision. Thank you.
How about minute entry for this one?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Let's see, proceeding number 24F-0204E, Mr. Foreman.
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me?
We can.
Wyatt Foreman of your commission council. For decision is whether to grant the exceptions to recommended decision number R25-0156 filed by Howard Kyoto on March 21st, 2025. This proceeding was initiated by Mr. Kyoto, a United Power residential customer, when he filed a formal complaint against the company on May 7th, 2024. The complaint alleges a mixed wire electrical service lateral installed by United Power caused power quality issues to Mr. Kyoto's home, and that United Power was giving preferential treatment to certain customers with different service lateral configurations. United Power moved to dismiss the complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, arguing, among other things, that as an electric cooperative, it is statutorily exempt from commission regulation under section 40-9.5-103, and therefore its own established regulations and procedures for member complaints displace the commission's complaint process. The ALJ denied United Power's motion on September 17th, 2024 in decision number R24-0651-I. The ALJ found that Mr. Kyoto's allegations of preferential treatment were sufficient under 40-9.5-106, which gives the commission jurisdiction to hear complaints regarding discrimination by cooperatives as to rates, charges, service, or facilities. A one-day hearing was held on January 28th, 2025. At the hearing, Mr. Kyoto detailed the extent of his power quality issues and cross-examined several United Power witnesses, primarily regarding the length measurements of the service lateral in question. United Power, for its part, emphasized that it had been trying to work with Mr. Kyoto to resolve the issue, and it had not been able to identify a problem on its side of the meter, and that therefore the cause of the power issues must be on Mr. Kyoto's side. Multiple United Power witnesses also testified that Mr. Kyoto's mixed wire service lateral was common across its members and across utilities generally. Additionally, United Power's witness testified that the company had offered to bring out a representative of United Power and a third-party electrician to help diagnose the power quality issues past the meter, but that Mr. Kyoto had not taken them up on that offer. On February 13th, Mr. Kyoto filed a motion to supplement the record. And then on March 4th, the ALJ issued the recommended decision denying the complaint as well as the motion to supplement. Regarding the motion to supplement, the ALJ found the information in the supplemental exhibits was foreseeable to be necessary at hearing, and that the exhibits did not address the narrow issue of whether United Power subjected Mr. Kyoto to prejudice or disadvantage in the electrical service he was provided. Regarding the complaint, the ALJ found that although it is clear Mr. Kyoto is experiencing power issues, he had failed to meet his burden of proof to show United Power had discriminated against him as required by the limited commission jurisdiction here. On exceptions, Mr. Kyoto now raises three interrelated arguments. He first argues the ALJ lacked a factual basis for determining non-discrimination. Mr. Kyoto asserts the ALJ's conclusion is not supported by sufficient factual findings because the record contains no evidence establishing how many other United Power customers have a mixed wire electric service lateral of the same configuration as his own. Mr. Kyoto next argues the recommended decision failed to adequately consider the technical implications of mixed wire service laterals in excess of 220.9 feet, which is the length Mr. Kyoto contends the service lateral actually is. Mr. Kyoto asserts the ALJ's finding of non-discrimination is premature because he states that service lateral configuration is uncommon or possibly unique. Finally, Mr. Kyoto argues the recommended decision is arbitrary because of the absence of factual findings on comparable United Power service lateral installations. As relief, Mr. Kyoto requests 1, the commission remand the proceeding for further fact-finding. 2, that it require United Power to provide data on other customers with comparable mixed wire service laterals. 3, that it have a PUC engineer calculate the low voltage and ampacity figures using the correct wire sizes and correct wire lengths. And 4, that it review the information provided in Mr. Kyoto's motion to supplement, which the ALJ has dismissed in the recommended decision. On April 2nd, United Power filed a response to Mr. Kyoto's exceptions, in which it also reiterated the argument made in its motion to dismiss that the commission does not have jurisdiction over this complaint. Regarding the first argument on exceptions, United Power asserts Mr. Kyoto is attempting to reverse the burden of proof. It is Mr. Kyoto, the company argues, who has the burden of presenting evidence supporting his allegations of discrimination or preferential treatment, but the company states he did not present any such evidence. The company further argues the recommended decision relied on sufficient record evidence to support its conclusions. Regarding Mr. Kyoto's second argument, United Power again asserts he failed to develop evidence in support of his allegation that the service lateral configuration is uncommon or unique. The company acknowledges the ALJ did not make specific findings regarding the technical specifications of Mr. Kyoto's service lateral, but emphasizes that this is appropriate because the commission lacks jurisdiction over general issues relating to the engineering of the distribution systems of exempt electric cooperatives like United Power. United Power highlights the extensive record of technical analysis of Mr. Kyoto's service lateral, which it states demonstrates that every piece of United Power's equipment is functioning properly. United Power then characterizes Mr. Kyoto's third argument as a variation on his first two, and reiterates the company's assertion that he did not meet his burden of proof, and that it presented unrebutted evidence that mixed wire service laterals are common, and that the use of one at Mr. Kyoto's property was not differential treatment. Finally, United Power also argues Mr. Kyoto's requests for relief are not warranted or necessary. Regarding remand for additional fact-finding, United Power asserts Mr. Kyoto was already given ample opportunity in discovery and at the hearing to procure and present evidence of discrimination. As to the specific configuration of his system and whether it meets low voltage specifications, United Power states it has measured the voltage drop and found that Mr. Kyoto's voltage is slightly above normal, meaning there is no need for additional fact-finding. Regarding Mr. Kyoto's request for United Power to provide data about other customers who have service laterals of similar length, the company states that it is a burdensome exercise that would not result in any evidence of discrimination because the ALJ found that mixed wire service laterals are common. United Power similarly argues Mr. Kyoto's request that commission staff make certain calculations relating to his service lateral is also unnecessary, as the commission can rely on the actual data presented by United Power in its report filed as Exhibit 200 and its attachments. Finally, regarding Mr. Kyoto's request for reconsideration of his motion to supplement the record, United Power reiterates the arguments from its initial response to the motion that the new evidence comes too late, that it does not indicate whether there is any issue with United Power's equipment, and is not material to the question of whether United Power has engaged in any discriminatory treatment of Mr. Kyoto. I can pause here for a minute or continue to a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Council recommends denying Mr. Kyoto's exceptions in full because he has not carried his burden of proof to show United Power discriminated against him. As the recommended decision identified, the commission has limited jurisdiction to hear complaints against electric cooperatives like United Power. Under section 40-9.5-106 subsection 2, the commission's jurisdiction is limited to disputes involving rates, charges, or service, which subject any person or corporation to prejudice, disadvantage, or undue discrimination. Because Mr. Kyoto's complaint and response to the company's motion to dismiss both alleged preferential treatment, we agree with the recommended decision that the commission does have jurisdiction over the complaint. However, we also agree that Mr. Kyoto has failed to meet his burden of proof to show preferential treatment by a preponderance of the evidence. At hearing, in his motion to supplement the record and on exceptions, Mr. Kyoto's case primarily concerns the quality of his service and that the cause of his service issues is the length of the mixed wire service lateral installed by United Power in 2020. However, Mr. Kyoto's primary contention with the service lateral is not that he is the only customer who has a similar configuration, or that others have a better or more stable configuration, but that the service lateral causing his voltage drops, but that the service lateral is causing his voltage drops, and that United Power is not measuring the service lateral correctly and making its voltage and ampacity calculations. This alone is not sufficient to satisfy the preponderance of evidence burden Mr. Kyoto must satisfy as a proponent of the order in this proceeding under Commission Rule 1500. Council agrees with United Power that Mr. Kyoto is attempting to shift the burden of proof to the company on exceptions, which, as the complainant, he cannot do without first satisfying the burden himself. Council believes the recommended decision cited to sufficient record evidence to support its findings and conclusions that Mr. Kyoto did not sufficiently prove his case. Multiple United Power witnesses testified that mixed wire service laterals are common among United Power members and among utility customers generally. Furthermore, there is significant evidence in the record that United Power has worked with Mr. Kyoto to try to identify the cause of his electrical problems, and the evidence shows the issue is likely a behind-the-meter issue that the company cannot control. For these reasons, we recommend denying the exceptions and upholding the recommended decision. And council also recommends the decision include an encouragement to the parties to discuss the company's offer to engage a third-party electrician to investigate the behind-the-meter issues that may be causing these power quality issues for Mr. Kyoto. And I'll stop here for a vote.
Commissioner Goman,
Thanks, Mr. Foreman. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, my agenda disappeared. I think Mr. Davis, you had the last item before the Black Hills rate case.
Actually, I think it's Mr. DeCenso who's going to present.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'll give Mr. Davis a break here.
Thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mitchell DeCenso of your Commission Council. For decision today is an application for rehearing, reargument, or reconsideration filed by the Colorado Energy Office. For context, this proceeding was opened administratively on January 3rd, 2023 to serve as a repository for annual reports on percentage of income payment plans, or PIP programs, as well as to receive the most recent evaluation of utilities programs pursuant to Electric Rule 3412K and Gas Rule 4412K. On January 7th, 2025, in proceeding number 25M-0003 all, the Commission held a cross-proceeding SIM where the Commission engaged in dialogue with staff regarding potential next steps and priorities for work on income-qualified energy bill assistance and energy programs in 2025. Resulting from this SIM, on January 27th, the Commission in this proceeding issued decision number C25-0053I, by which it sought comments from electric and gas utilities regarding whether to extend the timeline for the next triennial evaluation and whether other practical issues need to be addressed as part of a waiver or variance. On February 13th, 2025, in response to that Commission decision, Public Service filed a response joined by Atmos Energy, Black Hills, and Colorado Natural Gas, stating that they had confirmed with CEO and agreed with the Commission's proposal to extend the deadline for the next triennial evaluation. Through decision C25-0193, issued March 19th, 2025, the Commission extended the deadline for the next evaluation of utility income qualified bill assistance programs pursuant to Commission rules and closed this reporting proceeding. CEO filed an application for RRR on April 8th, 2025, in which it seeks clarification of the dates of the next evaluation period. The date the next evaluation process begins, whether there is a specific filing deadline for the next evaluation, and whether these dates are contingent on whether or not the Commission adopts rules. I could pause here for your discussion over the recommendation.
No, if you could give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Council agrees with CEO regarding the potential confusion with the Commission's directive on the next program evaluation date. Accordingly, we recommend granting CEO's request for clarification and correcting paragraph 10 of decision C25-0193 to set a clear date certain for an evaluation period. Consistent with prior recommendations, we recommend making clear that the next evaluation period will extend from November 1st, 2026 through October 31st, 2029, while also permitting for the completion of a potential rulemaking to modify the Commission's rules regarding PIP programs. This timeline would allow the necessary runway for the Commission and stakeholders to consider updated rules in the interim, should it so choose.
Commissioner Gutman,
Thanks, Mr. DeCenso. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision granting the application for RRR in part and clarifying timelines. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's jump back up to the Black Hills rate case 24AL-0275E. Ms. Friedman, Ms. Dundas.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ellie Friedman of your advisory staff, and with me this morning are Mike Mendelson and Ian Fetters, also advisory staff, and Commission Counsel Lindsay Dundas, and Ruthie Harper. So the Commission issued decision number C-25-0183 on March 17th of 2025 in this proceeding. Through that decision, the Commission authorized a $17 million revenue requirement increase with a 10.13% increase across all rate classes except the large power transmission customers. Black Hills, the Office of Utility Consumer Advocate, the UCA, and trial staff of the Commission filed applications for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, or RRR, of Decision C-25-0183 on April 7th, 2025. So to start right in, the first issue before the Commission this morning is UCA's request that the Commission reconsider its decision to allow a rate increase in this proceeding. When deliberating on this issue in February, the Commission noted that in this case, as with any decision, affordability is an important aspect in the decision, but is not the only criterion. UCA argues that the Commission can evaluate Black Hills rate increase request using affordability as the critical issue, and objects to the Commission's statement that affordability serves as a backdrop to its decisions. UCA contends that by not using affordability as a primary criterion in its decisions, the Commission's decisions are shifted in favor of the company and its shareholders. UCA cites the Commission's affordability work plan from the Commission's 2020 exploration of electric utility retail rates, in which the Commission stated that affordability is a critical part of the Commission's oversight as it regulates Colorado gas and electric utilities. And UCA references the Commission's 2023 decision in Public Services Solar Rewards proceeding that, quote, it is increasingly critical to consider each decision the Commission makes from a perspective of its impact on affordability. UCA also cites testimony in this proceeding. The Black Hills territory is economically distressed, and the Black Hills customers pay rates that are higher than elsewhere in Colorado. UCA contrasts this with Black Hills filings with the Commission that indicate the company saw earnings growth each year from 2015 through 2023. UCA contends this is evidence that Black Hills does not require a rate increase. UCA further rebuts the Commission's citing to a West Virginia case in which the Commission found it would be unlawful to deny a rate increase based on affordability. Referencing the Commission's affordability initiative and its electric retail rate survey report, UCA argues that the West Virginia case is not applicable in Colorado. Additionally, UCA points to statements from the legislature and the governor requesting the Commission reduce energy cost burden. UCA repeats its argument that the Commission has the authority to reject any rate increase request, and that doing so would not constitute a regulatory taking or a confiscatory rate. So I'll turn this to you for discussion at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. For me, as I said at our initial deliberations, this has been one of the most difficult cases I've heard in my time on the bench. I was moved and deeply concerned by the comments regarding the impacts of Black Hills rate increase on these communities, some of the poorest in the state. At the same time, as I said before, however, I believe we have legal and fiduciary duties to Black Hills that make it inappropriate to dismiss any rate increase out of hand as UCA is recommending. So I would deny the UCA RRR request. Commissioner Gellman?
Sorry, I had a little trouble with
Bouncing
the button.
back and forth.
I was having trouble with the clicking. Yeah, I mean, I generally agree to deny UCA's RRR request here. I agree with you that this is a really difficult circumstance. A lot of the facts UCA points to are accurate in terms of the economic situation in Black Hills Electric service territory and the rate comparison that they have. And a lot of the comments we heard, about people really struggling to pay their bills in that area, which, as you indicated, has made this a very difficult proceeding to hear and to deliberate on. But I think the commission has appropriately considered affordability within the context of each of the other decisions that we've made here, and simply saying no rate increase to reflect the cost of doing business is not an appropriate option here. But happy to continue the discussion on affordability as we thread through the other decision points today.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I agree as well, and I would point out that the triple R's that we're considering here are on one side that we've given too much to the utility, and on the other that we haven't given enough, which I think reflects the reality that this commission is trying to find a balance between what the company is requesting and the impact that we recognize is on all the ratepayers in the territory. So I would agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman.
Thank you. So now I'm going to turn to Mr. Mendelson for a discussion of capital structure, return on equity, and cost of debt.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory team. Black Hills asked the Commission to reconsider its rulings on capital structure, return on equity, and the cost of debt. If okay, I'll present all of the company's cost of capital arguments and then turn it to you for discussion. With respect to capital structure, the Commission agreed with staff concerns regarding the fairness of debt and equity allocations amongst regulated and unregulated activities, and determined the appropriate analytical starting point is that of the holding company, BHC, which is structured with 44% equity and 56% debt. The Commission then adjusted that value, allowing a range from 47 to 49% equity as a midpoint between staff's and Black Hills proposals, determining that range was generally consistent with the range of recently authorized values. In its triple R, Black Hills calls it a radical departure from the Commission's own rate-making principles and precedent. The company claims that its proposed level of 52.66% equity, representing its per-book capital structure, reasonably reflects the actual capital structure used to finance its electric utility operations. Black Hills argues the legal standard as articulated in Peoples Natural Gas is clear. A regulatory authority cannot base rates on a hypothetical rather than the actual capital structure of a utility unless existing capital structures so unreasonably and substantially vary from usual practice as to impose an unfair burden on the consumer. The company argues the Commission's decision attempts to sidestep this legal standard without evidentiary support, and says the Commission then made an undisclosed modification to arrive at the authorized range. Black Hills notes that UCA's Mr. Fernandez testified that the proposed capital structure of 52.66 is reasonable for a regulated electric utility and does not materially prejudice ratepayers, and that the Commission came to the same conclusion in prior rate case proceedings, including number 14AL0393E, proceeding number 16AL0326E, and other decisions dating back 10 years. The company contends there has been no material changes to the relevant facts and circumstances from those prior cases that would justify a departure in this rate case. Further, Black Hills contends that the Commission's decision reflects a gross misreading of the Peoples decision because the parent company in the Peoples case was the only entity that had a capital structure at all, and that BHCOE is unique from Peoples Gas in that it retains its own books and records. When combined with the adopted ROE range, which I'll discuss below, Black Hills argues the authorized WACC of 6.9% results in an extraordinary erasure of 53 basis points of overall return, which would likely lead to loss of investor confidence in BHCOE, thus endangering its ability to provide safe and adequate service and its ability to raise sufficient capital for projects such as clean resources in the company's clean energy plan. Black Hills also argues that the Commission cannot rely on UCA's modified position regarding capital structure, arguing a party's attempt to change its position in its SOP is new evidence for which cross-examination was not possible. With respect to ROE, the company notes that the commission based its adoption of an ROE range of 9.3 to 9.5% as falling within the stock market's valuation of BHC, arguing this ignores the market cost of equity reflecting current market conditions, which was shown to be 9.83%. The company claims its request is consistent with the average authorized ROE for vertically integrated utilities for the 12 months ending September 30th, 2024. The company argues the Commission's adoption of the 9.3 to 9.5 ROE also ignores the errors and flaws in staff's and UCA's testimony. Staff only utilized a single analytical model with no objective checks on reasonableness, had formula errors in its initial calculation of DCF, and utilized an overly restrictive proxy group selection criteria, which excluded companies of comparable risk and impacted staff's overall analysis. UCA, according to the company, inappropriately limited its equity risk premium evaluation to historical rates of return, inaccurately reported the historical market risk premium as compared to UCA's own source, relied on two highly questionable sources of projected treasury bond yields, and failed to reflect a size adjustment. According to Black Hills, perhaps the most telling fact is that the current average authorized ROE for staff's proxy group is 9.68% and 10.04% for UCA's proxy group. And a combined average for those two is 9.86%, which is slightly higher than Black Hills' request. Further, the company argues the Commission's decision in the instant case does not consider record evidence that utility bond yields are 98 basis points higher than when the Commission authorized a 9.37% ROE in Black Hills' 2016 rate case, where the 10 and 30-year Treasury yields are 150 and 190 basis points, respectively, higher than in 2016. Finally, with respect to the cost of debt, Black Hills argues the Commission's decision truncated the company's actual cost of debt, which had been stipulated to by both staff and UCA to the second decimal point, as arbitrary and capricious. The company argues not only does the Commission's displeasure with using 2 decimal points undermine 50-plus years of rate-making practice, the Commission does not explain how arbitrarily knocking off a decimal point reflects a better estimate of actual cost of long-term debt. I'll pause here for your discussion and can answer any questions.
So I guess I propose we take each of the 3 issues in return. I have some extended comments on the capital structure, and then really curious to hear where you guys are coming from. And I just say the company asserts in its RRR that our approach in this case is a radical departure and arbitrary bending of legal principle, turning 180 degrees, a flip-flop, and represents arbitrary unpredictability. For me, however, this case is largely one of first impression, given Black Hills' recent more than doubling, almost tripling of average capital spending, given that the last Black Hills electric rate case was filed in 2015, and given that the other cases referenced by Black Hills were in a different industry, in a separate service territory, involved in other utility, or a different bench. Said another way, past practice does not create precedent for this commission. And more importantly, we must determine the appropriate capital structure based on the current record and circumstances. As such, the PUC is not bound to accept Black Hills' position as the actual capital structure just because it asserts that it's the structure the company tries to manage toward. Nevertheless, since Black Hills' RRR is concerned about the basis of our common equity ratio decision, I'd like to provide more detail on my thinking. To start, this record is clear that capital is raised at the holding company level and not at the Colorado subsidiary. So I generally agree with staff that looking at the holdco capital structure and adjusting it to account for the unregulated subsidiaries seems like a better approach for determining the actual capital structure. In trying to adjust the holdco capital structure to apply it to the Black Hills Colorado Electric subsidiary, I generally found Mr. Stevens' exhibit, hearing exhibit 514 HC, to be more accurate than the staff exhibits. Given that 514 is highly confidential, I just say that I looked at the capital structure of the holding company, removed the unregulated subsidiaries, played around with multiple different allocations of debt associated with the source gas goodwill in column A. Based on that, I still support the common equity ratio of 47 to 49%. Based on this, I couldn't really get close to staff's 44% and struggled to support the company's proposal of a 52.7% common equity ratio. This 47 to 49% outcome on the common equity ratio is generally in line with the market and other regulated Black Hills subsidiaries. For me, the most compelling market evidence on common equity ratios on this record comes from Mr. McKenzie's rebuttal testimony, table AMM-7R at page 58, that shows allowed electric utility common equity ratios from Q3 2022 through Q4 2024. In this table, the average low common equity ratio is 45 to 48%, the average high is 54.92, and the overall average is just over 51%. This range of permissible common equity ratios tends to be further supported by an examination of the common equity ratios of Black Hills' other operating subsidiaries. Hearing Exhibit 514HC and Hearing Exhibit 500, Table FDS-24HC, provide the capital structure for Black Hills subsidiaries through the end of 2023. A review of those subs, as modified to include the outcome of the most recent rate cases and to include all of the Black Hills subsidiaries identified in Mr. Stevens' rebuttal testimony, suggests a low common equity ratio of 44 to 45%, a high of 54 to 55%, and an average just above 50%. Finally, the party positions further support this range, with staff at the very bottom of the range at just over 45%, and Black Hills closer to the upper end at 52.67%, and Mr. Fernandez suggesting a midpoint of 50% in his oral testimony, although, as Mr. Mendelson said, the UCA SOP disavowed that testimony and supported staff. Although I agree with Black Hills, perhaps we can't really rely on the disavowal. In sum, the overall record suggests that the actual CE common equity ratio should fall between 45 and 55%. Given all this, our initial decision setting the ratio between 47 to 49 still seems appropriate to me. It is comfortably within the range of comparable utility common equity ratios, well above the 44 to 45% floor, is material higher than the common equity ratios of at least two other Black Hills subs, and is almost at the exact midpoint of the staff and Black Hills common equity ratio recommendations. Finally, this range is generally reflective of the actual holding company common equity ratio of 44% as adjusted for the unregulated entities and the source gas goodwill. Again, I would view the holdco as the corporate level where capital is raised and that actually interfaces with and is disciplined by the capital markets consistent with the Peoples Gas decision. Again, to me, we are following Peoples Gas and setting the common equity ratio based on the actual capital structure of the Colorado sub. At the same time, however, I also think the CE common equity ratio will help create the proper capital spending incentives for the utility while leading to just reasonable rates overall. And sorry, I got one more set of points to make. And that is, for me, the levels and productivity of Black Hills capital spending, both historical and projected, is a relevant factor in establishing rates in the public interest and creating appropriate capital spending incentives. More specifically, regarding capital spending levels, from 2016 to 2021, Black Hills capital spending averaged $36 million. On this record, these relatively modest capital spending levels seem appropriate for a regulated utility with little sales or revenue growth, serving a community with average income well below state averages. Despite virtually no revenue growth since 2021, and despite the fact that Black Hills service territory has gotten relatively more disadvantaged versus average state incomes over time, Black Hills greatly increased capital spending to over $60 million in 2022 and over $90 million in 2023. This is a very large increase, which is overwhelmingly non-revenue generating, and appears to be the primary factor driving that rate increase in this case, as Mr. Harrington generally acknowledges in his oral testimony. For me, there's always a somewhat challenging trade-off regarding the timing and amounts of capital spending required to protect system safety and reliability versus long-term customer rate impact. Even if certain capital spending is found to be prudent, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was well advised given customer rate impacts. Based on this record, particularly Mr. Wolf's oral testimony, I'm concerned that long-term rate impact may not be top of mind for Black Hills, especially given the financial incentives that exist in cost of service regulation, where higher capital spending directly raises the company's rate base and earnings. This record also indicates that the company intends to maintain these higher levels of non-revenue generating capital spending through at least 2028. Given these actual and proposed levels of capital spending in a struggling community that has historically not experienced meaningful sales and revenue growth, on this record, I believe a somewhat lower return on capital as compared to the company's requests may provide incentives that encourage meaningfully greater capital spending restraint. Finally, last thing, unlike the Piesco rate cases where there is extensive evidence and discussion of credit metrics, there was nothing like that on this record. So for all these reasons and on this record, I'd stand by our initial decision. But I'm really interested to hear where you're both coming from. As I said in our initial deliberation, I could support something higher, but really curious to hear where you're coming from. So, Commissioner Gilman, sorry for the long comments, and really want to hear where your thinking's at.
No, thanks. It was helpful for context. And just to clarify for me, as I understand, you'd like to stick with the capital structure identified in the first deliberation. Was the same true for the ROE? I wasn't clear if that was what your last comments were referencing.
No, well, so I'm fine with for the debt costs, I would be fine with including the additional decimal point. I went back and looked at some of our prior decisions, and we have gone out to two decimal points. And so I was persuaded by that. I'd keep to the same ROE and keep to the same WACC. So that's where I'm landing, but really curious to hear what you're thinking. And I do have some comments on the ROE, but I want to hear from you before I jump into that.
No, I appreciate the clarification. I just wanted to see where you were at. Maybe just to address the debt cost first, because I do think it's the easiest.
Yeah.
I'm fine with moving to 4.61%. I think they've made a fine point that it's more accurate. We have the information. No need to round when rounding is not necessary here. So I take your original point, like there's a false precision in all of this. Yes, but we need not round in that circumstance in the middle of all the calculations. So I would support the 4.61 on the debt cost. With regard to capital structure, I tend to agree with you, and I think you've made most or all of the points that were in my head. This record was really devoid of very specific information about the credit metrics and impact of Black Hills Electric specifically, because obviously only Black Hills Corporation is disciplined by the capital markets, and that's where we really have the data. So I think that represents a necessary and defensible starting point to really understanding what should or could be necessary for the capital structure as we move forward. So I agree with your points, and also agree with your conclusion of sticking to our original determination.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I think thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your complete description, and I agree with your analysis, and I also would agree to extend the debt out to 4.61 as opposed to 4.60. So I agree with both of your points.
All right, and thank you both. And I just have somewhat briefer comments on the ROE, which is I'd also propose keeping to our prior decision for all the reasons outlined in our initial decision. I'd also point out that authorized ROE in this case is highly consistent with the ROEs that have been allowed for other Colorado electric and gas utility. I'd also like to note that companies witness Mr. McKenzie projected equity risk premiums, which are generally inconsistent with historical values and with the company's own growth projections to the investor community. As UCA argued, historical growth rates seem very relevant. UCA also suggests that the size adjustment Mr. McKenzie made was not an appropriate consideration. I also tend to discount comparisons to a non-utility proxy group, as that approach seems to be inconsistent with prior commission practice. And as Ms. Segala argued, data removal for too low value causing the question the company's DCF modeling, and in particular, reliance on third-party growth projections. Staff and UCA also note Mr. McKenzie failed to submit out analysis applying the MS-DCF model structure. In addition, I point out that the company contends we ignored the market cost of equity. I counter that the company, in effect, ignores the dividend yield of its own parent and the projections at gross that its own parent communicates to the investor community. As such, the company suggests we should ignore the only meaningful arbiter of what constitutes the market, and that is the market itself. Finally, as we just discussed, until Black Hills can find more productive revenue-generating investments, can grow sales and revenue, or can exercise greater capital restraint in a service territory with many customers who are struggling economically, perhaps capital returns at the lower end of the permissible range may be appropriate. So, Commissioner Gilman, thoughts on ROE and WACC?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with your assessment, and I don't have anything more to add. I think your reasoning certainly makes sense to me and aligns with where I was on this issue. So I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree as well.
Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Friedman, LM 6000. Mr. Mendelson, does that give you what you need?
It does, but I just wanted to confirm, you mentioned holding the WACC at 6.9%.
I guess it may be a small change just because of the debt. Or do we keep it at, or should we keep the WACC at, no, I think we can keep the WACC at 6.9, can't we?
We can.
Are you proposing a small adjustment to the WACC to account for the 6.91?
Can I come back to you and explain what the change in the debt costs would? But it should be very small. It would be like a 0.1%.
I think I'm okay with that. Commissioner Gilman, do you have a view?
Yeah, I think that makes sense if Mr. Mendelson can crunch the numbers real quick when we're off on the other issues. I mean, otherwise, I don't know the utility of changing the debt cost from 4.6 to 4.61 if it didn't have kind of the impact on the WACC. So I think we should mathematically figure out what that is.
Okay, so Mr. Mendelson, will you figure that out? And I think our vote can allow you to adjust accordingly. We're going to change some other stuff, so I don't know. We need the final numbers for this discussion and vote.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you.
Ms. Friedman, Mr. Mendelson, I think the next issue is the LM 6000.
Yes. So there are two issues raised with regard to the LM 6000 generation unit. First, the $3.7 million ordered to be refunded to ratepayers for collection of income taxes through the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. That's the CACJA rider. and also rolling the cost recovery of the LM 6000 into base rates. So first to that refund, Black Hills objects to the commission's order that $3.7 million be refunded to ratepayers because the company did not adjust the CACJA to reflect the 2017 decrease of the federal corporate income tax from 35% to 21%. The company characterizes this as retroactive rate making and argues that it had updated the LM 6000 revenue requirement for the income tax component without adjusting other components, that would have constituted single issue rate making. Black Hills also cites the commission's decision in the 2016 rate case in which the commission stated that the CACJA rider should not be modified until the commission reviewed it in a future phase 1 rate case, and further determined that the CACJA would not be subject to a true-up. Black Hills notes that when it submitted its plan to address the decrease in the federal corporate tax rate proceeding, number 18M0074EG, the company noted that the CACJA rider would not be included in the plan pursuant to that 2016 rate case decision. Black Hills maintains it had no obligation to file a rate case in order to revise the CACJA rider and argues that the rider had been determined to be just and reasonable. Additionally, the company argues there's no evidence that if Black Hills had made a filing related to that rider, that a decrease actually would have resulted because the entire revenue requirement and that unique capital structure would have been reviewed, resulting possibly in a net increase. Black Hills also criticizes the $3.7 million amount as arbitrary because in requesting this amount to be refunded, staff stated, there is no way for staff to be certain about the amount of overcollection that occurred, and further, staff states that it conducted a back-of-the-envelope estimate to establish that $3.7 million amount. Finally, Black Hills argues the commission lacks the authority to require the refund, and doing so constitutes unlawful retroactive rate making. All that being said, Black Hills also states that if the commission declines to reverse its decision regarding this refund, the company requests the commission authorize a general rate schedule adjustment, a GRSA, to be effective when the CACJA refund has been completed. And that's consistent with the commission's handling of the amortization of litigation expenses in this case. So with that first issue of the $3.7 million refund, I'll turn the discussion back to you, unless you want me to make a recommendation.
I'd probably keep to our prior decision, but would find the request to do a GRSA adjustment as proposed by the company fine, but curious to hear where you're coming from, Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I generally agree. I mean, this is a issue of conveniently accepting more of the taxes after the taxes have dropped. So I think it's reasonable to stick to our previous discussion.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I would, Mr. Chairman, what you described with the GRSA as the company requested, but I would stick with our 3.7.
Ms. Friedman.
Sorry, I agree to the GRSA.
Thank you. All right, then, so moving to the cost recovery and base rates, in the decision, the commission authorized the company to roll into base rates the cost recovery associated with the LM 6000, eliminating the CACJA rider recovery for that unit as established in the 2016 rate case. The CACJA had a WACC of 6.02%, which was unique to the LM 6000. In this proceeding, the commission found that that WACC was obsolete and that rolling the cost recovery into base rates would be fair because the LM 6000 is financed in the same way as all of the company's assets. In RRR, UCA objects to the concept that rolling the costs associated with the LM 6000 into base rates is fair to the company. UCA argues this is unfair to ratepayers and contends that Black Hills changed the way the LM 6000 was financed without prior commission approval. So again, I can make a recommendation or turn this to you for your discussion.
Yeah, for me, the two are linked. Adjusting for the over-collected tax revenues is part of the decision to put it into rate base. So I really would deny them both together. but Commissioner Gellman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
So then, moving to the rate case expenses. In its RRR, Black Hills contends the commission exceeded its authority when finding that the company overcollected and must refund $962,000 in rate case expenses from the 2016 rate case. Black Hills argues that since no tracker for litigation expense recovery was authorized in that rate case, the commission cannot now correct that omission by retroactively imputing a limitation. Black Hills goes on to state that in past rate cases, the commission has included specific directives that the utility file for a rate decrease after the costs have been amortized, but did not do that in the 2016 rate case. The company notes the specific language of the decision in that proceeding declines to authorize a process to reconcile rate case expenses, but sets the recovery period at 3 years. Black Hills argues that the finding of overcollection and required refund is arbitrary, single-issue rate making, and constitutes retroactive rate making. So I'll turn this for your discussion, or I can make a recommendation.
Yeah, on this one, while I appreciate staff's advocacy here, that initially led me to an adjustment of the total allowable rate case expenses after reading the RRR from Black Hills. I don't think the commission's prior decision in the 2016 case was explicit or clear enough to make an adjustment here for prior rate case expenses. So I probably grant the Black Hills request here after digging into this a little more. But again, really curious to hear where you guys are coming from. Commissioner Gellman.
Yeah, I mean, I generally tend to agree with you, especially given the contention that these are options the commission at the time had and did not exercise to try to ensure this would be followed up upon. I mean, clearly this is a fairly extreme example in terms of the amount of time that this went on, kind of being collected under the guise of rate case expenses when those were long since paid off. I think the general theory is that evens out, but I think that's something we need to really focus on in rate cases going forward to ensure that if all we intend to be collected is the actual rate case expenses, that we enable mechanisms to do so. But it does appear that the prior commission did not do so. So I think this is a more difficult one to move forward with, and would be supportive of your position to grant the RRR on this point.
Commissioner Plant.
Thanks. I think I'm still at a denial on this one. You know, I mean, I think it was pretty clear in the order that there was an expectation, and also in the record of the last case, that there was an expectation that they would come in 3 years. They identified the costs associated with the legal costs at $550. The company collected $960. You know, I mean, you've got the costs are $550, you collected $960. Seems logical to me that that's an overcollection, and you know, money that is due back to the ratepayers. So I would stick with our initial decision on that.
I guess let me just add, I think I would even despite Commissioner Plant's argument, I'm prepared to stick with accepting the Black Hills RRR. Has Commissioner Plant changed your mind, Commissioner Gellman?
It's not something I feel great about, but you know, I think that the prior commission had that authority, they had that option and just didn't exercise it. I think the remedy that is more legally defensible and appropriate here is to make sure during our time on the bench that we watch this issue and ensure that in our decisions we're making clear if our intention is only the actual rate case expenses can be recovered, that we make that apparent and enable mechanisms to do so. Since that wasn't exercised, it's just difficult for me to enable that here. So I very much respect Commissioner Plant's perspective here. This is not something that feels great, but I just don't think there was the process in place for us to enforce this after the fact.
Does that give you what you need Ms. Friedman. I think this is going to be a TBC decision. So,
Yes. I just am wondering, Commissioner Plant, did you want to write a dissent on that, or would you like that your opposition noted in a footnote?
Yeah, just the footnote's fine.
Thank you. Okay, moving to depreciation expense. The company requests reconsideration of the commission's decision that the company's annual depreciation expense be based on a 13-month average calculation in the same manner as the authorized 13-month valuation of rate base. Black Hills reiterates its argument that depreciation expense is an actual expense necessary to the company's operations and is unrelated to the valuation of rate base used to calculate a return on investments. Black Hills witness Johnson actually testified to that. Black Hills also notes previous commission decisions in which the commission authorized year-end depreciation expense calculation, rejecting UCA's arguments in those proceedings that depreciation expense should match rate base valuation. Again, on this issue, I can provide a recommendation or turn it to you for your discussion.
well, we probably need to go back to the prior issue. Wasn't there an amortization thing, whether it was 3 or 4 years, we need to discuss, but I'll take this one up and then we'll go back to that, Ms. Friedman.
I'm sorry, yes, I skipped over that.
All right. Glad for once I'm right. On the depreciation, I'd probably stick to our prior decision for the reasons outlined in our initial order. You know, the idea is to keep the rate base period, which was adopted by Black Hills in its rebuttal testimony, and the depreciation period consistent. But Commissioner Gumman?
Yeah, no, I generally agree with you here. I think this is at the commission's discretion to determine what's the most appropriate, and given the balance of issues in this proceeding, I think sticking with our prior determination denying the triple R here is the most appropriate.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Ms. Friedman?
So going now back to issues related to rate case expenses. UCA requested that the commission modify the decision's authorized 3-year amortization of rate case expense recovery to 4 years, which is consistent with the company's rebuttal testimony, accepting UCA's proposed 4-year amortization. In authorizing the 3-year amortization period, the commission considered the 4-year term for litigation expenses associated with this proceeding and a 2-year amortization proposed by UCA for litigation expenses associated with previous rate cases. So I can provide a recommendation, or if you'd like to discuss this, either way.
I think the 4-year amortization makes sense since Black Hills agreed to it. So I'd go to the 4 years. Commissioner Gumman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So since I'm out of order, it appears that now I'm going to turn the presentation to Mr. Fetters.
Yes. Mr. Fetters, welcome.
Thank you. Can you all hear and see me okay?
We can.
Excellent. Good morning. I'm Ian Fetters with the Yale's advisory staff and going to talk about production meters. In this proceeding, Black Hills included approximately $683,000 worth of production meters in its cost of service study. Staff proposed to disallow the portion of those meters specifically associated with net metering only customers worth approximately $525,000. However, in decision C-250183, the Commission ultimately decided to disallow the full balance of the production meters. In its triple R, Black Hills says the ostensible discrepancy of $158,000, that is, the portion of those meters associated with customers who have opted for the production-based incentive, should not be disallowed, saying that it is inconsistent with staff's recommendation and that those meters are needed to track RES compliance. And I can pause for discussion or can provide a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors recommend denying Black Hills triple R on this issue. While it is accurate that staff only recommended disallowing a portion of the meters, staff's general assessment through the case is that the production meters for small customers are collectively unnecessary. While Black Hills asserts that compliance with the RES statute is best tracked through production meters, it is not the only way to track RES compliance. Staff points out that since Commission C20-0289, Public Service has made REC payments based on PV watts estimates. And while tracking RECs more precisely is one specific use of the production meters, the critiques in the Commission's decision remain true for those meters used for tracking RECs as well.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I. Keep going, Mr. Fetters.
Thank you. I think it's back to Ms. Friedman now for LTIP.
Yes, there are several compensation issues that were raised. The first is the long-term incentive plan, LTIP. Black Hills requests the commission reconsider its decision to disallow long-term incentive plan costs in the revenue requirement. The company requests allowance of 50% of these costs. LTIP is awarded as restricted stock and performance share awards to executives at the VP level and above. And Black Hills states that the program is intended to motivate employees to make significant contributions to the success of the company and provide competitive compensation to attract and retain talent. UCA had supported the 50% allowance, but staff rejected inclusion of any LTIP expenses. Black Hills notes that the commission allowed recovery of 50% of these expenses in proceedings in 2019, 2021, and 2023. So on this point, advisors recommend denying Black Hills. Of the three proceedings, Black Hills notes where 50% of the LTIP was allowed, 2 were results of settlements in which staff and UCA initially opposed recovery. The commission disallowed LTIP in the company's last electric rate case and also denied this in Public Service's most recent gas rate case. In that gas rate case from last year, the commission noted that Public Service had not provided evidence that the program led to employee retention. Similarly, in this proceeding, Black Hills provides a description of how the LTIP should function to attract and retrain executive level employees, but provides no evidence that LTIP is key to executive level employee retention, nor that ratepayers are benefiting by Black Hills retaining these executives. So for those points, we recommend denying Black Hills on this point.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
So the second issue with compensation, it relates to the disallowance of severance costs. Black Hills contends that there's no precedent for the commission's denial of severance costs and characterizes the denial as unreasonable and arbitrary, asserting that the commission has never disallowed all employee severance expenses from recovery. Black Hills maintains that these expenses are part of the normal course of business and are prudently incurred costs consistent with industry practice. Black Hills notes that they have been found to be prudent for decades. The company objects to the commission's reasoning that these expenses are within the utilities' control, noting that severance costs are necessary in private and governmental sectors. So I can return this for your discussion or make my recommendation.
If you have a recommendation, that'd be great.
So we recommend granting Black Hills' request on this issue and allowing severance expense of $89,899 in the cost of service. As Black Hills points out, these expenses are consistent with industry practice as well as general business practices, and the commission has historically allowed them in the utilities cost of service.
I was convinced by the Black Hills RRR and advisor recommendation, but Commissioner Gilman, what do you think?
I remain opposed to inclusion of these costs. I struggle to see how the ratepayers benefit from these payments, and some certain examples staff points out are very significant in cost per employee. I think it's directly within the control of the company how much they spend here and what they do with staffing. As well as staff points out other potential expenses of employee separation, like increased training and other things that ratepayers are inherently paying for anyway when a staff member separates. So I would continue to support its exclusion and deny the
Commissioner Plant?
I would support the RRR on this issue.
Commissioner Gilman, do you want to just have a council and advisors drop a footnote, or do you want a dissent?
Yeah, I think a footnote is fine.
All right. Keep
Thank
going.
you. We're making progress. So the company also requests reconsideration of several of the commission's decisions on trackers. First, Black Hills requests the commission reconsider its denial of a tracker for insurance costs, stating that this denial is inconsistent with the commission's approval of a tracker for property taxes, which the commission authorized. Black Hills contends that its insurance expenses have varied considerably from year to year and are outside the control of the company, noting that the company's premium on renewal in July 2024 increased by 155%. Black Hills also requests the commission reconsider denial of the tracker for the company's greenhouse gas fees required under the Environmental Justice Act. The company argues that since these fees are imposed by a state agency, they are conceptually indistinguishable from PUC fees, which have a tracker. So advisors recommend the commission deny Black Hills on both requests, as the company fails to provide evidence that either tracker is necessary. The company's statements regarding the proposed property insurance tracker are confusing. Black Hills states that its excess liability coverage premium renewed in July 2024 had increased by 155%, but that appears to be the amount for Black Hills Corporation as an overall organization. Black Hills testimony on the proposed tracker indicates that while insurance costs have varied since 2018, and the increase from 2023 to 2024 was 43%, for the period from 2018 to 24, the year-over-year variations for those years were about 5% or less. Black Hills has not demonstrated the single year's change is indicative of continued volatility and warrants the creation of a tracker. In the same way, with the GHG tracker, the company's first annual GHG fee of $44,000 was paid in 2024, but Black Hills provides no additional information as to why, after 1 year's evaluation of the fees, the company has determined that a tracker is necessary. So again, we recommend denying both of those requests for trackers.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
Okay, thank you. So now turning to phase 2 issues. UCA requests the commission reverse its decision to accept a rate mitigation strategy that applies a uniform 10.13% increase across all rate classes except large power service transmission. UCA contends this strategy was first presented during the technical conference, and interveners did not have an opportunity to review it, which is a violation of Colorado Administrative Procedure Act that requires all parties be accorded due process. Additionally, UCA objects to the shift of $600,000 to the residential and small general service classes. UCA notes that Black Hills had initially proposed a 13.99% increase across all rate classes, and staff opposed to any rate mitigation. UCA suggested that using its proposed cost of service study rate mitigation would be unnecessary. UCA recommends the commission reverse this decision and instead adopt UCA's class cost of service study, which requires no rate mitigation. So I can pause for your discussion unless you'd like me to make a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can make a recommendation, that'd be great.
Okay. Advisors recommend denying UCA on this point. Based on the evidentiary record, the commission found no compelling reason to accept UCA's proposed class cost of service study, and there's no reason for the commission to reverse that decision. The use of the alternative rate mitigation strategy aligns with the commission's discussions regarding balancing rate increases for residential customers with moderating increases for larger businesses. And that was fully adjudicated before the evidentiary record closed.
Commissioner Gutman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
Okay, thank you. So now I will turn back to Mr. Fetters to discuss inclining block rates.
Howdy again, commissioners. Now going to talk about inclining block rates. In this proceeding, Black Hills proposed to move to a default flat rate and eliminate its existing inclining block rate structure. Staff supported Black Hills' proposal, but EOC opposed the proposal and recommended the commission instead retain the inclining block structure. In decision number C250183, the commission sided with EOC, directing Black Hills to maintain the inclining block structure, and agreeing with EOC's concerns about potential harm to low-income customers from eliminating the inclining block rate. However, Commissioner Gilman dissented from this portion of the decision, arguing that the inclining block structure is inconsistent with state policy goals and inconsistent with cost causation, and that the record evidence contradicts the idea that inclining block rates benefit low-income customers. In its R, Black Hills largely echoes Commissioner Gilman's dissent, saying that the preponderance of evidence shows that inclining block rates harm low-income customers. So the decision point is whether to grant Black Hills R on the inclining block rate structure, and I'll pause for discussion.
So Commissioner Plant, I thought Commissioner Gilman's dissent and the company's R were somewhat compelling, so I'm waffling a bit, but but I'll probably stick with you. Where are you coming from? You can decide. I'd like you to decide this one.
So I would stick with our decision actually, and deny the R. The latest information from the Residential Energy Consumption Survey suggests that low-income people use less energy, but at a higher intensity. And that's all the data that I've seen that's consistent, I think, with EOC. And so, an inclining block rate, not only, provides a benefit for people who are using less energy, but it also provides a pretty strong incentive to reduce intensity. So I think there's, two tools that benefit low income in the inclining block rates as a default rate, and that's why I'd stick with it. I think Commissioner Gilman and the company echoes this, bring up a good point in terms of beneficial electrification, and that inclining block rates are not good for beneficial electrification customers, but that's why we have, the option for people to implement a time of use. And, the beneficial electrification technologies are also very, aligned with time of use application, and more easily managed. So I think that makes a lot of sense that people would opt into a time of use rate with beneficial electrification. But I think because of, the large number of low income folks the evidence that I've certainly seen indicates that they would benefit from having an inclining block rate. So I'd stick with our decision.
I will also stick with our prior decision. So, Commissioner Gilman, would you be okay with a footnote referring back to your dissent, or would you like to have a new dissent?
I guess my reasoning has not changed, and I guess what I'd like to add in a plea to you is this is entirely based on disputed evidence in the record. So, what EOC says is better for income qualified people is not what the data and analysis that was conducted by Black Hills on their own customer data shows. So I think it's a very thin evidentiary record here, even supporting this. And further, I'm just not clear on the reasoning on why, even if giving the benefit of the doubt, even if EOC's data is accurate, more accurate than Black Hills, since it's totally disputed, why wouldn't we then make it an optional rate that customers could opt into if they saw it as more beneficial for them? I wasn't at all clear in the first deliberation about why we stretched that to say that should then be the default for every customer. I don't really understand the rationale. I mean, certainly it's possible some customers could benefit from it, which may mean you make it an option to ensure that those income qualified customers who would benefit from it are able to take service under that rate. But I think especially given the significant issue that it causes with the state policy goal of promoting beneficial electrification, I just can't really understand why we would make it the default rate with such a significant downside. Why wouldn't we just make it an optional rate for customers who actually saw it as more beneficial to them, whether they're in the income qualified category or not? I don't really care if you narrowed who could take service under that rate, but I'm just not sure why it would become the default rate with such an obvious and significant downside to beneficial electrification.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when thinking about, opt-in as well as time of use, and I've made this argument in other time of use cases as well. I mean, you're talking about a certain level of engagement of the customer base with, both their utility bill and the ways in which they manage, actively manage that energy use. And I think that we're talking about in Black Hills territory, a population base that is less engaged in that way. Number one, they have lower levels of beneficial electrification than in other utility territories already. And number two, they have a very high level of people who are income qualified and at-risk populations that are likely to be less engaged in, the sort of proactive management of their energy bills. There's it's not as high on their priority list. And I think that the opportunities, the lower cost opportunities for lowering their energy bills are energy efficiency, and the inclining block rate really offers that opportunity prioritization as a direct benefit with both ease of implementation and also an established inclining block rate structure. So I think that in this particular utility territory, it's more beneficial to go that way. I agree that ultimately as we increase our beneficial electrification in the territory, moves towards beneficial electrification for Black Hills customers should be accompanied with information about switching to time of use and ways in which they can manage their energy consumption within time of use, and that moves in that direction. But to do it as the default rate for the entire population, I think at this point is just premature, specifically for the Black Hills territory.
So I guess I'm going to stick to our prior decision and with Commissioner Plant here. And you don't have to decide now. You're welcome to have council and advisors drop a footnote, or if you'd like to do another dissent, Commissioner Gilman, whichever way you'd like to go.
Yeah, I'll probably just do a footnote referring to the previous. I mean, my reasoning has not changed at all from the decision.
Okay. Back to you, Ms. Friedman.
All right,
We're getting
thank
there.
you. Yes,
15
we
out
are.
of 19.
Black Hills objects to the decision's agreement with staff's recommendation that the company revise its tariff sheets to reflect a policy of retaining data for 10 years. Black Hills characterizes this requirement as ambiguous and overbroad. The company contends this issue had minimal impact on discovery in this proceeding and argues that there is no commission rule that data be retained for 10 years. Black Hills states that data retention, whether in physical or digital form, is costly and will lead to higher rates. Black Hills requests the commission reverse its directive or narrow its application. So, upon further review of this issue, advisors agree that staff's reference to a discovery policy is unclear, and we recommend the commission grant Black Hills' request on this issue and eliminate the requirement that Black Hills file tariff sheets with the data retention policy. However, having access to historical data is important. So advisors recommend the commission direct staff and Black Hills to establish what data should be retained by the company and in what form it should be retained, and include a proposed tariff for data retention in Black Hills' next phase 1 or phase 2 rate review filing. If staff and the company cannot agree on a tariff language, each shall file a proposed tariff sheet or sheets with the supporting testimony.
That makes sense to me on this record. Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
Also agree.
So that concludes the issues subject to triple R, but there were several requests for clarification of the decision, and the commission has one additional issue to deliberate on. So first to clarifications. In the decision, the commission notes that Black Hills removed travel expense associated with the development and review of testimony. UCA requests the commission clarify that all travel expenses associated with this proceeding are denied. Specifically, UCA notes that the revenue requirement study provided by Black Hills in the technical conference includes $30,000 for other rate case expenses. UCA requests the commission clarify that no travel expenses are to be included in the revenue requirement study. And advisors recommend confirming that the commission did determine travel expenses are excluded from the revenue requirement study, and any additional travel expenses in the revenue requirement study should be removed to be consistent with the commission's decision.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
Okay, thank you. So the next issue for clarification actually ties back to your earlier decision here. UCA suggests there's an error in the calculation of the total litigation expenses in paragraph 145 of the decision. That included $184,000 authorized for litigation expenses in this proceeding, and then about $2 million for previous proceedings, offset by the $962,000 in overcollection for litigation expenses in the last rate case. Now, just a few minutes ago, you did reverse that collection of the $962,000. So what we're going to recommend is clarifying what the new expenses would be. And UCA's concern was first that the numbers as they were in the decision did not add to a total cost of $1,222,000. And we would clarify that the commission uses rounded numbers in their discussion, and those were what ended up in paragraph 145. Actually, what the commission was dealing with were specific expenses detailed in the evidentiary record for the 2016 rate case expense that was calculated by staff as $962,498. Total expenses from previous proceedings, $2,046,898. Taken with the $184,000 for litigation expenses in this proceeding, that's how the total was calculated. So our recommendation would be in paragraph 145 to modify that so that the actual numbers are reflected, but also because the overcollection of litigation expenses will not be refunded, that will be worked into the decision in the same way, if that makes any sense.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Freeman. I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I.
So thank you. And so one other issue is in paragraph 144, UCA points out a probable typographical error, which it is. The amount of litigation prior expenses is indicated to be 2.4 million, contrary to the 2 million indicated in paragraph 145. So that would also be corrected as a typographical error.
That's fine. Commissioner Gilman,
Yes, I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
Okay, thank you. So the final clarification is not, I'll try to be as clear as I can on this. As we were looking into staff's requests on this, we discovered a few other issues. So staff requests the commission clarify wording in paragraphs 193 to 196 to be clear that the recovery of the 2024 pension and medical expense should be included in the cost of service, not the rate base. So in the initial, in paragraph 193 and 194, staff request that the commission correct that, but also note that this is the first time the company is requesting inclusion of the prepaid pension and retiree medical assets and liabilities. Advisors find that this claim that this is the first time was refuted by company witness Stevens in his rebuttal testimony. So given this, staff's proposed changes to paragraph 193 and 194, indicating that this is the first time, is not correct. And they had requested in paragraph 194 some amended language indicating that that was the first time. Staff also suggests in paragraph 195 seems to conflate recovery of the 2024 pension and retiree medical expense in the cost of service with including the prepaid pension and retiree medical assets and liabilities in rate base. So staff suggests clarifying paragraph 195 as staff agrees with the inclusion of the 2020 pension and retiree medical expense in the cost of service and suggests implementing a tracker mechanism with true up to prevent over or under recovery. Staff then offers a statement at the end of the paragraph that says staff disagrees with the inclusion of the prepaid pension retiree medical assets and liabilities in rate base with the associated WACC return. Staff contends that these assets are not being used to render the service of producing and delivering electricity to its customers, and therefore ratepayers should not be responsible for paying more for pension and retiree medical funding than the company requests at each rate case. For paragraph 196, staff recommends removing the words rate base so that the first sentence reads, "We authorize recovery of costs related to the 2024 pension and retiree medical expense and approve a tracking mechanism." Again, in this paragraph, staff suggests a sentence addressing the prepaid pension and retiree medical asset and why it should not be included in rate base. So with all of that, advisors recommend the commission accept staff's proposed clarifications with regard to the 2024 pension and retiree medical expense included in the cost of service, not rate base, but that the commission reject the appended sentence in paragraph 194 that indicates this is the first time the company has requested inclusion of prepaid pension and retiree medical asset liability in rate base, and in paragraphs 195 and 196 because these statements were not originally in staff's testimony and are counter to previous commission decisions. So with all of that, I put it to your vote.
I'm fine with the recommendation, Commissioner Goen.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree as well.
So
I think that's everything, Ms. Friedman.
we have one more.
Okay.
We have one decision. Finally, staff points out that the commission did not deliberate on Black Hill's request to include its prepaid pension and retiree medical asset liability in rate base. And so we suggest the commission address that this morning. Black Hills requests the inclusion of $962,680 for balance sheet assets and liabilities associated with pension and retiree health care in rate base. The company states that these reflect the difference between contributions and expenses. Black Hills notes that the issue of including pension and retiree health care assets in rate base was addressed in proceeding number 17 AL 0363G, Public Services Gas Rate Case. In that case, although the commission removed Public Services prepaid pension asset from rate base, the Denver District Court found that the prepaid assets resulting from the timing differences between contributions and expenses for these plans resulted in assets that could be included in rate base. Black Hills also references the commission's decision in proceeding number 22 AL 0046G, in which Public Service was allowed to include its prepaid pension asset and prepaid retiree medical asset in rate base with a WACC return. Staff recommends the commission reject the inclusion of the pension and retiree healthcare net assets in rate base, arguing that ratepayers should not be responsible for additional payment into the pension fund over what the company requests in each rate case, characterizing this as retroactive rate making. Staff also argues that allowing these net assets in rate base could require ratepayers to make up any losses suffered in the investment trust. Staff also contends that the commission has not previously allowed unrecovered, non-test year expenses to be converted to assets and then allowed in rate base. Staff argues that doing so would reward the company for poor investment performance and reward miscalculation of the expense. Black Hills objects to staff's characterizations, stating that pension asset is the result of contributions to the plan being greater than the cumulative expense and is not the result of under or over collections. The company notes contributions to the plan are governed by the Internal Revenue Code and that expenses are governed by Financial Accounting Standards Board under generally accepted accounting principles. These are separate rules and can result in differing amounts, so there is a likelihood that an asset or liability could result. Such assets or liabilities are not indicative of underperformance or outperformance. Black Hills further rejects staff's statement that Black Hills invested and lost money, so customers are being asked to pay in again. The company states the pension plan is healthy and has a funded ratio of about 89% as of December 31st, 2023. Black Hills rejects staff's argument that the inclusion in rate base constitute retroactive rate making, confirming that it is including current balances of the pension asset and retiree health care liability to set rates going forward, and citing a similar action in proceeding number 23AL0231G, which was the last gas rate case filed by Black Hills. So, advisors recommend authorizing Black Hill to include the pension and retiree health care actuarial net assets in rate base. The company has provided an explanation that these net assets are the result of compliance with IRS and GAAP rules, and has confirmed that the pension plan is healthy and there are no issues with mismanagement of the investment. Additionally, Black Hills' requests to include these net assets in rate base are consistent with previous commission decisions and is in accordance with the Denver District Court rulings on this matter.
And Ms. Friedman, does this change the rates or revenue requirement as compared to our prior decision?
It does not. We were able to determine that Black Hills had indeed included this in the technical conference. We could see that it was included in rate base.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Ms. Friedman. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I. And I guess, thank you, Ms. Friedman. Before we drop off, I would just invite Mr. Mendelson to see if he's been able to crunch the numbers and come back to us with a revised WACC.
Yes, Chair Blank. So modifying the cost of debt to 4.61 increases the allowed WACC to 6.91%.
I like the rounding off, but I think at this stage of the process, I'll accept the 6.91. Does that work for you, Commissioner Gellman?
Yeah, I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
Are you sure we don't want to make it 6.913?
I don't want to go to 3 decimal points. I don't even want to know whether it's higher or lower. Let's stop there. Mr. Mendelson, does that give you what you need?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And I think, are you guys okay if it's a TBC order? I think we're off the statutory clock, but let's see if we can process it pretty quick. Does that work for you, Commissioner Gellman?
Yes.
Commissioner Plant?
Yep.
And then one last final thought before we break. There's a public hearing conference on April 28th, 11 to 1, a remote hearing on the just transition solicitation, and then an in-person meeting May 1st in Hayden from 4 to 6 on the just transition. But I think I got ahead of myself because I see Ms. Dundas.
Really quick, I'm fine with the TBC order, and I think we're prepared to get that circulated quickly. But to be clear, the deadline is 5/7 for that order to get out.
Okay.
We are under
Thanks.
statutory limit.
So we are under a statutory deadline.
Yeah, if we don't get a decision out addressing the triple Rs, they'll be denied by operation of law on the 7th.
Okay. I think we would like to get this decision out. So, all right. Thanks for the clarification, Ms. Dundas. Commissioner Gellman, final thoughts?
No, nothing additional. Thanks.
Commissioner Plant?
Yep. Thanks a lot.
With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.